Hello and welcome to MashTalk, the show where we catch up with the most interesting people in tech. I am your host, Mashable Tech editor Pete Paschal, and I'd like to introduce our guest. You may not know his name, but you know his work. It's one of the people behind Sling TV, which was the first live TV video service over the internet. It's Jimshade Chaudhari, and welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Cool. My pleasure. Thanks for coming in. You've been at Dish for a while, right? So how long have you been with Dish?
I've been with Dish for about 8 years.
Okay.
I started on the Dish side of the business and then moved over to Sling back in 2015 when we launched.
So were you involved with the launch?
I was involved with the launch. I wasn't, at that point, I was still on the Dish side. I was working on our TV Everywhere services, which was on the Dish side, how you were able to view your content on online and mobile devices.
Okay.
And then that was one of the precursors along with a service we had called Dish World, which was actually a live streaming service that focused on international content.
Oh, interesting.
And that launched first, and then that's what morphed into what people know today as Sling TV.
Oh, I didn't know that background. Okay, so Dish World, so that was more targeted at people who wanted to see international content here in the States?
Correct.
Okay, so that's probably why I didn't.
Yes,
No,
you probably weren't the target demographic.
Wasn't looking for those Russian soccer games
Yes.
or whatever they're doing. But like, what did you kind of like obviously the different products, but is there like what translated other than like, was it mostly just the technology or?
Yeah, a lot of it was the technology, right? This was a product that was available on Samsung TVs, on Roku devices.
Okay.
And it was an app, like Sling TV is an app. And so we learned a little bit about consumer behavior there, but a lot of it was really kicking the tires on the technology and making sure that we knew, like, the internet was never designed for streaming live video content, right? And so this was kind of our precursor. I wouldn't call it a beta because it was a live service to customers, but the learnings were primarily technology, a little bit around user habits.
Interesting, because I think most people like associate, because of the name Sling, that, oh, this sort of grew out of the Sling box, but you know that's kind of like not a bit of a disconnect, and it's kind of one of my questions is why, I know you weren't directly maybe involved with the launch, but like why they went with the name Sling if it kind of didn't have much to do with the Sling box, but maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a partial misnomer, not a misnomer. Like how did that come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. Basically, we as people in the tech industry, we're all familiar with Slingbox.
Yeah.
The masses really weren't familiar with Slingbox. So Sling was kind of a new name for them, and we've actually turned it into a verb, right? If you've seen our latest commercials, we have a concept called slinging, right? Where how people are cutting the cord and adopting the slinging lifestyle, right? Getting the freedom and the choice that comes with watching video on Sling TV versus their traditional pay TV provider.
Yeah, I guess it's just because it's sort of similar that you would sling, you would say sling, I'm slinging this to my phone or whatever, which was kind of, I guess, the primary thing you wanted to see your, because for those that aren't old enough to remember the Sling box, it was a box you would kind of plug into your whatever your cable box or provider, and you would basically like, okay, I want to see my content when I'm out and about, whether it's at a hotel or on the phone or whatever. And so basically it let you, whenever you had access to the internet, you could see like your DVR content and whatnot.
Your live content. And I think to kind of take your analogy a little bit further is that allowed you to have some kind of freedom and control of your viewing experience even when you were outside your home,
right?
Which is a lot of what Sling TV allows people to do. So even though the technology is very different, there's no hardware Sling box you have to buy to get Sling TV, right? We're just an app that you download. But the concept of being able to take your content with you on the go was similar between kind of Slingbox and Sling TV.
Which was kind of like, and even though I know the tech is different and the sort of general idea is different, I mean, it was a revolutionary idea at the time, or at least kind of everyone sort of thought of it as the dream, but no one kind of quite knew how to do it because it seemed dangerous with, so much, territorialism, I guess, in that space, and everyone kind of watching out for copyright, and basically nobody wanted to get sued, so they kind of seemed to figure out like how to thread that needle in a way and get at least people talking about this and influencers talking about this, like, hey, why can we not figure this out? I forget what the year was, but it was probably like 2009, 2010. Yeah, like, surely we can figure this out. And they kind of like helped chart that path. And I think because Dish acquired them, that they seemed a little more protected once that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think about that, they were ahead of their time in terms of seeing where consumer engagement with video is going. The consumer needs and wants were evolving. People wanted to access content outside of their home and even outside of their local territory, right? One of the big use cases back then for Slingbox was watching your local sports team when you weren't in the same state or in the same city, right? But that was a completely different hardware-based solution. And I think even though the names are similar for majority of customers and for majority of people out there, unless you were a really geeky early adopter, you didn't know what Slingbox was. So when Sling TV came out, it's this whole new thing. And at, a Consumer Electronics Show, we would have a couple of hardcore Slingbox fans come to us and say, "Oh, is this the next evolution?" We're like, "No, this is much better. There's no hardware required, right? This is the ability to pay for the channels you want, take them where you want, watch on the device you want." So it's a much better solution. And really, it's not an evolution of Slingbox other than kind of conceptually just being able to watch content on your device outside your home.
Yeah, and it's obviously like where we're at now. That's now just the expectation. It's like everything's become portable. Cable services and other providers like that are offering ways to port your content to wherever you are. It's actually pretty rare not to have that now. Exactly. So give me some stats. I mean, Sling TV, debuted, I believe, January 2015.
Yeah, that's February, but pretty close. At
Okay,
CES, we announced ourselves.
Right.
We launched in February.
Gotcha. So, and here we are now, almost 4 years later, so it's at least 3.5. There's been a lot of players come into the space, but like, how big are you now? What's the growth been like? Just hit me with like, what's
Sure.
the status of Sling?
Yeah, so like you said, we were the first ones at the gate back in 2015, and we were the pioneer in the space. We basically defined a live OTT streaming space, and we're still the leader. We have 2.344 million customers as of last quarter.
Nice. Is that do you measure that as active users or subscribers, I guess?
Paying subscribers.
Got it.
At that point. And from that perspective where, there's people a couple services that are close to 1 million and a lot of services that are much lower than 1 million. So we have still the kind of leader in the space. We have people using our app across all the popular platforms that are out there, from Roku to Amazon to Xbox, etc. Obviously we were at 0 back in 2015. To get to, over 2 million is pretty substantial growth for us. And this space is still really nascent, right? A lot of people, they've heard the term cord cutting, but don't really know what that means or how to do it, right? And so a lot of our time has been educating people on just what is cord cutting, what is Sling TV, what are the options out there that aren't traditional. And the competition actually helps in that standpoint, right? When there's more people out there telling people, hey, you don't have to pay for traditional cable or satellite to get this content, there's other options out there. It's at least creating more awareness. And now it's not just educating people about what is Sling TV or the category. It's educating people, why is Sling TV different than some of the other services that are out there.
And how is it different? What would you say are your main sort of points of differentiation now that I guess the major players are like PlayStation View, Hulu, YouTube TV, a couple of others? Yeah. Like what do you guys hold up? Hey, this is what you're getting and why you should go with us.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty fundamental difference from all the different players that are in there, because what we've seen is a lot of people have just replicated the model that was on traditional pay TV. There's a biggest bundle, right? And you have to pay for a lot of channels that you're not watching. We've actually completely changed that paradigm. What we do is we offer people the opportunity to come in and just buy a base pack. So we have 2 kind of base packs called Orange and Blue that are $25. But then if you're a sports fan, you can just add on a sports pack. Or if you're a news junkie, you can add on the news pack. So you don't have to pay for channels that you're not watching. It's not the biggest bundle, which a lot of the other players in the space have just taken the model that was on traditional and just delivered it over the internet. We've actually completely revolutionized the model, right? Where people can pick and choose and have that control over what they're paying for based on what they like and what they want. Even from a functionality standpoint, right? We offer a cloud DVR to our customers, but we don't include it with everyone because we don't want to charge everyone and raise the price with cloud DVR. So for the people who really want that, because they're used to DVR, they can pay for that cloud DVR. If you don't want it, you don't have to pay for it, and you can still pay that $25 price and watch all the great content that you want.
So I'm feeling like you're saying it's more like being the most differentiating thing is like it's really serving you, like what you can kind of customize the service to a certain degree, just however you want. and make sure you're not like wasting money on something that you never use, which is, you know, obviously a big complaint of the traditional players. You get, you know, whatever it is now, 10,000 channels,
Yeah.
probably even more than that now, but and you know, you just feel like you're using like less than 1% of it.
No, that's you hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of people you hear is like, hey, I'm paying for 100 channels, but I'm watching 7 of them, right? And I think we really took that insight into account and said, well, why are we making people pay for channels if they know what they want to watch? And honestly, people's needs change based on, there's a lot of seasonality in our business, right? Football season right now is a huge season for us. We see a ton of people adding the sports pack, watching football content, and once football goes away and maybe Game of Thrones comes on, or, you know, Walking Dead is just back, we see people kind of shifting packages and different extras and add-ons based on the time of year. So it's that control over, spend the money on the content that you want to watch, but don't be locked into things that you don't care about.
Now, is that how sort of the slogan came about? I see it on the apps. It's a la carte TV. Is that
Yes.
sort of the
Yeah, so
sort of
a la carte TV just really letting you pick and choose what's most important to you and giving you that control back. You don't see that with other services. And you're right, that's what you see that as our tagline. It's something we've used for a couple of years, but it's really based on that control and that choice.
But is it, you know, do you get nitpickers going, well, it's not really a la carte because I can't actually go down to the channel level and like pick this and that? Do you get some of that feedback?
Yeah, we definitely, there's a minority of people who said, oh, true a la carte would be I would pay for every single channel I wanted. And honestly, where we are from an industry perspective, we are the closest thing to a la carte TV, and the content providers who own the content, you know, they have a big business that they've made on traditional paid TV. And so they're creeping their way and just tiptoeing into this OTT world.
Right.
And so I don't think there's an incentive for them to go truly a la carte where you pay on a channel by channel basis. And I think from a consumer perspective, people fail to realize sometimes that by going on a channel by channel basis, your aggregate amount that you would pay might be more than what you get as a discount with the bundle. So it's a great concept, I think, because I only want to pay for the exact channels I want to watch. But we're the closest thing in the industry that there is to a la carte.
I also feel like you kind of think you want a la carte, but maybe you don't, because every now and then, you know, something will, you know, you want to watch something that might be on a channel that you know, if you get really specific about it, you know, oh, wait, this one sports thing is on something that I don't even pay for or whatever. So like, I don't know. I feel like bundles and the way they're kind of being done now and getting skinnier is kind of the happy medium there. But I guess my question would be, do you think we'll ever get to a la carte, true a la carte as a thing, at least as an option?
I wouldn't say never, but I don't see it in the near future.
Gotcha. So you're the user experience guy.
Mm-hmm.
I know you probably think about that a lot, especially for sort of apps and stuff. Like, first of all, like, tell me how, like, when you do sort of an over-the-top live service, how do you think differently? How is it different from like just traditional cable with guides and whatnot? Like, what are some sort of fundamental first principles that you sort of come in with?
Sure. So one thing I want to clarify, so Sling is definitely a live OTT streaming service, but we also have 80,000 on-demand assets. So one of the big challenges for us is how do you create, you know, there's a paradigm for on-demand streaming services like Netflix, but we were the first one that was combining live and on-demand into the same application. And so one of the trickiest parts was how do you do that, right? If you think about Netflix or on-demand applications, you usually see carousels of content and you browse through thumbnails and you pick what you want to watch and you click on it and you start watching it. And so when we first launched, we were focused on, hey, cord nevers, people who had never paid for traditional paid TV. And we thought they would skew younger and, you know, that they were used to that browsing experience of on-demand content. And so we created a home screen called My TV, which showed, you know, featured shows and movies and featured sports that were on. And we made everything kind of thumbnail based. And then what we realized was those people found value in our service, but we were getting a lot of people that were cord cutters. They were used to traditional paid TV. And for them, they were interested in the new ways to kind of discover content. But fundamentally, what we kept hearing back from consumers was, I just want a guide. Like, even though the grid guide has been around for a really long time, that habit is so strong in people that that's where they gravitated towards. So after we launched, it was about a year later, we launched a grid guide. And honestly, I was shocked at the fanfare we got on social media by launching a grid guide, something that's been around for decades. But it's just for traditional paid TV customers, that's how they find content. And so we're experimenting with new ways. Like we have a sports section in our app, which shows you, you know, the hot sports by football and basketball and soccer and baseball, etc. So that's just a dedicated sports section where you can see what's on now, what's coming in the future. We also have a tab in our application called On Now, which just shows you everything that's live right now, not in a grid guide style, but just thumbnail based. So we're trying to cater to kind of both sides of people who are cord nevers and are used to more of an on-demand, kind of more graphic-oriented content-first experience. And then also the cord cutters who, there's a little trepidation, right? If I'm a current traditional video subscriber and I'm willing to cut the cord, like, is it going to be easy for me to find the content? Am I going to have a great experience? And so we've been kind of blending the best of both, right? Not trying to alienate people who are cutting the cord that are used to finding video content in a certain way, but also creating new ways for people to find content that they wouldn't have seen on their traditional MVPD.
Is there like a killer kind of feature that you hold up for those sort of maybe reluctant cord cutters, those first timers that are like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Like what is like, hey, you want to do this because this, whatever it
well,
is.
I mean, it's usually, it's really not a feature that drives that conversation at the beginning. It's cost, right? Like
Gotcha.
when they realize the amount of money that they'll save and that they'll have the same content that they had before, but they have the flexibility of choosing what device they want to watch it on and not having to pay a device fee every month back to a cable or satellite provider. That's usually the thing that gets them really interested in cord cutting. And then honestly, the grid guide is like a safety net. Hey,
Right.
come here. We'll actually show them a screenshot of the grid guide first to say, it's not as different as you think. This is actually an easy transition for you to make from traditional to new. And it's the same, it's the same brand name channels that you're used to paying $100+ for. You can just get them starting at $25.
What are the average cost savings for someone cutting the cord and just because the thing is that with all this sort of cord cutting and I'll subscribe to various services to get my content, you're still paying for your broadband internet, and that's a big chunk. And then it's like once you factor in, you certainly know better than I would, like how many other services someone's going to subscribe to, because they'll probably do Sling and probably also like Netflix or Amazon or like a couple other things on top of that. So once you so I guess how do you sort of think about that equation, and then what are the average cost savings for someone going to cut the cord?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky number to throw out there because it really depends on the situation. The way I would think about broadband is you're going to have broadband regardless if you had an OTT streaming service or not, because you use it for so many different things. So to me, that's almost a given cost that I don't associate with cord cutting, because you're going to have it anyways.
True, I guess, but you also got to factor in the the triple play. It's always like, you know what I mean? Yep. Like it's always going to be like, oh, if you do traditional cable, it's only whatever, $50, $60 more to get everything. I'm like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and you're right. The triple play, the quadruple play, for a lot of people, they discount video very heavily because they make all their money on broadband, right? So as long as they have you as a broadband customer, they can kind of throw TV into it. But at the end of the day, for a consumer, the video component of it, like with Sling, we make it easy to drop in and out, right, based on seasonality. So you're probably not paying the same fixed cost, right? So you don't, like when you sign up for a traditional paid TV, you're locked into 2-year commitment, you're paying that same cost every month. If you think of how people are cobbling together like their OTT solution, they'll take a service like Sling and then they'll complement it with a service like Netflix, or they might sign up for a service that's more seasonal. When Game of Thrones comes around, they might just sign up for HBO and then they might drop it. So their bill isn't fixed at that point. And so they have a little bit more control over there. So in terms of savings, like I said, coming up with an accurate number is tough because it depends on what your needs are, if you're living by yourself or if you have a household that has different interests in it. But from a typical kind of cable and satellite bill that's north of $100, $120 to, coming down to $25, that's a pretty big savings. Like you said, the internet has to be factored into that, your broadband connection. And the video services, the traditional guys, they're being really aggressive on pricing that video piece. But don't forget, there's device fees in there, right? There's one part that just says, hey, for $50 you get all the channels, but if you need 3 boxes in your home, that could be an additional $15, right? And you're saving that piece of it because there's no device fees.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up devices because, you guys, well, you dabble in hardware, but I mean, Sling obviously launched as like the big selling point. It's this cross-platform thing. It's going to be on now. It's on like Fire TV. It's on, you would know better than I would. All the stuff it's on. It's on everything. But I've got to think like to make sure the user experience is good on all those platforms. Like you think about just a regular like app developer. For you guys, it's not just like phones and tablets and stuff. It's like all the boxes and then all the smart TVs, and I think about sort of Android and the nightmares it has with fragmentation and certain devices not getting updates. I mean, is it like that? Is it like herding cats when you're trying to kind of like satisfy all your customers and the various platforms they're on?
Yeah, it's not an easy problem to solve. To your point, there's a lot of fragmentation. We're on 15 different platforms. We try to reuse common code wherever possible and try to put more of the logic into kind of the back end of the system so that clients are a little bit lighter on the different devices, but it's definitely a challenge for us. I think from a customer user experience standpoint, what we've seen is a lot of our customers that watch on, a Roku device, they'll also watch on mobile, but they're not going to watch on a Roku and another 10-foot device like an Amazon. So consistency for the sake of consistency is not that important to us. It's really more important that people should always know that they're in a Sling experience. So the content is the same across all those devices. The way you access your cloud DVR is the same. The tabs that we have or the sections of the app are the same. So customers, there's no learning curve from going from one device to another, but we'll take advantage of, if the star key on a Roku device always does the same thing in every app, we're not going to change that just to be consistent with, the Fire TV app for Sling. We try to build towards the native kind of paradigms that exist on a platform, but keeping everything up to date across all platforms, it's a tough job.
And I'm curious how like you think about voice now, with especially with discoverability and stuff on certain services, and things like Fire TV obviously integrate with Alexa, and there's other platforms that integrate their own assistants. Do you guys? First, what do you offer in terms of like that kind of integration? Where do you see that going? How important will it be ultimately in the future, like as a sort of way for your customers to interact with the service, but also sort of discover new content?
Sure. Voice what we think is going to be important. I mean, I think with the Alexa devices, the Google Home devices coming out there, it's definitely an easier way to interact, but it hasn't been optimized for a video experience, right? We've seen some experiences launch, and if you're watching video, you can say pause or fast forward, or if you're thinking about a carousel of content, right? Picking up your remote and hitting the D-pad 2 or 3 times to get to the right versus saying next item, next item, next item. So we think, look, voice is catching on, but it still needs to be optimized for that video experience. There's, in terms of, tuned to ESPN or tuned to AMC, I mean, that's much easier than going to a guide, scrolling down, and figuring out how to get to it.
I feel like it's like those first moving like parts of this experience are really served by it. Like to your point, certainly a fast forward, like I would certainly reach for the remote.
Yeah.
But I find for a lot of this stuff, even today, whatever service I'm on, that 10-foot, user experience with often a tiny remote, and you want to be doing these multi-word searches, you want to tell them more complicated stuff. Oh, I want to search all of these various services, but not this one or whatever. I don't know. Like you could have sort of complex stuff at the beginning. That's sort of why I was sort of alluding to discoverability, that's where it could really help.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think search is probably the best use case for it, right? But in terms of people typing with a remote and a virtual keyboard is painful, right? They don't have, voice is a much easier input than trying to type anything on a 10-foot device. So on Apple TV, you can search using your voice on Sling TV, and almost every hardware manufacturer has a voice component to it. And then there's the third-party devices like the Alexas and the Google Home. So we're having conversations with all of them. We're figuring out what the best way to integrate in. But like I said, voice is going to be important for us. We just don't think it's at a point right now where it's one of our top priorities.
Yeah. Do you do, in terms of how it's executed, a lot of sort of work yourself? Because I know there's only so much the top level guys. I mean, I imagine Amazon does a decent amount of work here because they're very much in the space as well. But like in terms of the commands and the actual specific things, just because I feel like they're doing mostly the top level stuff, and it's kind of up to the services sometimes to like, oh, if to really think out the specific commands and the natural language people are using with their service, which they might be more familiar with.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, the paradigm exists. What Alexa will do a lot of work, but then how do we want it to interact within a video service?
Right.
And a lot of times when you press that microphone button on these remotes, it switches to a universal mode where it's not just searching within your app and it's not just talking to your app. So if you say tune to ESPN just on an Alexa remote, like which service should it tune you to? Right? So there's questions around that. When you're in the Sling app, a voice experience is pretty straightforward. But when you're not, or if you're in the Sling app and you press the button on the remote and it takes you out into kind of a universal mode, there becomes a couple of trickier conversations that have to be had there.
Yeah. So I want to get your perspective on this, just because it's like I look at things almost from a ideological point of view when I think about a cloud DVR. And I'm thinking like, okay, a cloud DVR, it's great. Everyone, you get to record the shows you want. But, if you're a tech guy and you think about this for a couple of minutes, like, well, why isn't everything just on the DVR? Like, why is it, do I have my own thing partitioned off? Why isn't once something's broadcast just on a cloud DVR and it just becomes like an on-demand asset to everybody? And so, there's a history here maybe you could touch on with copyright and whatever. I don't want to go too deep into that rabbit hole, but isn't this kind of an inefficient way to do things? And do you envision like that ever changing in the near future or even the far future?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but the way a cloud DVR technically has to work or legally has to work isn't the most efficient because we have to keep a single copy for every user that's recorded it. And that's not a technological issue. That's just a legal copyright issue at this point. And so there's definitely more efficient ways to do it. I think in terms of on-demand rights are very different than getting live rights. And so you would say in an ideal world, everything's on demand. You wouldn't have to record things, but the windows are a little bit different. The fact that if you watch something on demand, you can't fast forward through commercials, and on a DVR you can. It's less about the technology limitations, and it's more about the content rights and legal implications around a cloud DVR. So do I think it's going to change? Maybe, but it's cloud DVR is still a relatively new concept with virtual MVPDs, and people have implemented it in different ways. So we'll have to see how it kind of shakes out.
You just threw out some cool industry lingo right then and there. MVPDs.
Sorry.
That's
yes.
Wait a minute. Well, the V, it's virtual multi. You're gonna have to give it for me. I used to know this, but now what is it?
Yeah. So there's virtual MVPDs, and then there's traditional MVPDs.
Right. And that an MVPD is just like
it's a traditional cable,
live.
traditional cable and satellite provider.
Yeah, and then you're virtual because
yes,
you're
with a virtual because we're over the internet.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about educating consumers earlier, and I'm curious about the other direction of that equation. Like you also mentioned the guide that kind of surprised you how popular it was. Is there any other sort of surprising insights or key insights that your customer base has taught you guys on how they want to interact with the service and what sort of things and features and content they want?
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot since we've launched in terms of how people want to watch that content, right? I think one of the things that was, I think, a little bit shocking to us was there's so much talk in the industry about mobile first. Everything's mobile first. Everybody wants to be mobile first. I realize is people still watch a lot of their TV at home. They gravitate towards the biggest screen that's available to them. So if they're on the go and they have the mobile device, they're going to watch on mobile because they don't have another option. But when they get home, they gravitate towards the largest device. So even though we see a ton of snacking on mobile devices in terms of content, watching, snippets of the end of the news or the end of the game or something when you're on the go, majority of our viewership is still on a big 10-foot device. And I think, to me, that was a little bit contrary to what we thought originally when we were going after cord nevers and kind of a younger demographic. These people are all mobile first. We're going to see majority of our viewing on a phone, and we're not seeing that at all. Yeah,
and I sort of have a thought on that. I'm not sure if it's a question, but I'm going to throw it to you because you're the guest. Sure. And that when you're on a phone, like I feel like the whole, like we talked about your competitors earlier, but like I think the whole like idea of what you're competing with is completely changes. I mean, when you're one app in this array on a phone, like you're not just competing with Hulu and YouTube anymore. You're competing with Candy Crush and your email app and like all the attention you're giving this device and whatever notifications are popping down from your top bar. So like that's kind of just an observation, but I'm just wondering, how do you think about you know, the mobile platform today in 2018 and sort of the trends that some have come to fruition, some haven't, in terms of user habits. And is it an arena, like you're in there, but I mean, is it a key arena for you, or is it sort of all about the, like you say, the 10-foot experience on a big screen?
For us, it's table stakes, right? You can't be a service right now and not have a mobile application. We see a lot of our acquisition come from the mobile device. Completely agree with you that there's 100 different things you could be doing on your phone, and you're competing for someone's free time at that point. But to us, mobile is just another screen, right? And for a video service like us, we want you to have a screen wherever you are, because that's the only way you can consume our service. So it's key to us from an acquisition perspective. It's key to us of people wouldn't sign up for a service if there wasn't a mobile outlet, if you didn't have an iOS or an Android app. But it's definitely a platform where, you know, you could be in a productivity mode and you're knocking out emails. You could be in an entertainment mode, and then, yes, you could play a game or you could watch video. And so we are definitely competing for free time at a macro level. But at the end of the day, for us, people are watching video on mobile. We want to be wherever people are watching video. So if that's on a mobile device, we'll be there. If it's on their desktop or if it's on a 10-foot device, for us, wherever that emerging trend is in terms of where people want to consume video, we'll make sure that we have a great experience there.
So you guys are on Apple TV, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what happens when Apple gets into this space, when they have a service?
Yeah, you know, we're on Amazon devices, and Amazon's dabbling in video. Roku has a free ad-supported thing. So, I mean, almost every device partner that's a partner of ours is also trying something out in video. Obviously, Apple has huge scale. They've been trying to get into video and talking about TV for a long time. And
not just talking. They're making deals.
They're making deals. They're doing original content. They brought a lot of key personnel over there. I think for us, it's a paradigm we're used to. Everyone's trying to dabble in video. And I think we still have a very unique service, because the set of content rights that we got in order to create, you know, the smaller packages and those add-on packages on top based on genre is something no one's been able to replicate. You know, whether that's, you know, YouTube TV or Hulu or DirecTV, we've seen everybody do big, bigger, biggest. And I still think that for us, that the differentiator is how we've been able to creatively package the content. So it'll be really interesting to see how Apple comes out. They obviously have a huge install base. They make great products. I don't see as a direct competitor of what Sling TV is doing.
So do you? Well, tell me about what's the future holding. Tease me something. What should I be looking forward to for Sling TV? You're obviously going to iterate on all your features and sort of make them more accessible and more robust. But you mentioned earlier you need a screen. Maybe that'll change. Is Sling Radio maybe a thing you're thinking about? I don't know. Get this podcast on it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Sling Radio probably not the direction we're going, but as the consumer needs and wants and trends change around where people want to consume video, we're seeing more and more people want to watch video in spaces that we didn't naturally think of. I mean, a lot of talk around AR and VR right now, right, with the Magic Leaps and Oculus and things of that sort. It'll be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out, and if that becomes a primary consumption habit, you can expect Sling to have a great experience there. Or, you know, as cars get smarter and more autonomous, I mean, what are the drivers going to do, right? They're either going to be doing something productive or they're going to entertain themselves, and just, you know, what's that video experience look like, you know, in a smart car, right, or autonomous car. So really for us, it's chasing the evolving customer trends around video consumption. As connectivity gets better, as screens get more pervasive in things, you can expect we will follow the consumer needs and wants to create a great experience for those verticals.
Nice. So if you don't mind, I'd love to play a little game with you here right now, Jimshade. Is that all right?
Sure.
It's basically word association. So you know how this goes. I'm going to say a word.
Okay.
And you really just got to just right away, the first thing that pops in your head, like what is this doing in your head? And I might have a follow-up question when you do that. All right. Ready?
Sure.
Binge.
Viewing.
Okay. That's straightforward. Yeah. Buffering.
Problem.
How is that problem at Sling?
Luckily for us, it's become very much less of a problem from when we first launched. But, you know, when people switch from the traditional way of viewing, when you typed in a channel number, you just got video right away. When people move over to OTT, since the internet wasn't designed for live TV, now that channel doesn't pop on instantly. Sometimes you see a spinning wheel. Sometimes you see a black screen. We've spent a lot of time over the last 3 years to make sure that people don't see that. When we first came out, you were seeing a lot more of it. And now, we've had huge pay-per-view events, right, where people are paying $50, $60, $100 and everybody watching at once. And the expectations are very high when you're paying that kind of money for an event. And we've had a lot of the major fights, no issues for us.
It used to be an issue, and less so, I think probably because I upgraded my hardware, was like, because I had an original Fire TV stick, and now I've got the current one. And it would be when there's this something I've DVR'd, and I would try to fast forward, I would try to treat the fast forward through ads and stuff as if it were like a DVR cable box, my experience. And it would kind of like not really know what to do, and the app would crash and I'd have to go back. But I feel like that's sort of been solved by better hardware, better ways of dealing with that, maybe on the back end.
Yeah, and I think honestly the sticks have gotten better, right? The Wi-Fi connectivity, and so it's a combination of that and a lot of work that's been done on the back end, because consumer expectations are only getting higher and higher of what they expect from, especially when you're a cord cutter moving from traditional to OTT. You just expect things to work at the great experience, cheaper price.
Yeah, you just want that sort of the good things about what you had.
Exactly, what you had on the traditional side.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, back to word association. Cable.
Old.
Stream.
Future.
PlayStation.
View.
That one was a little predictable, perhaps. Pixelated.
Atari.
Okay, that's cool.
That's kind of first.
Yeah, we're of a certain generation, I think. Or did you have you backed the Kickstarter?
No, not yet. No,
the console.
I know what no.
Yeah, I'm in.
You're in.
Oh yeah, I want the wood grain.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sweet.
Classic.
It better be sweet.
Yeah.
Bundle.
Breaking.
Analog.
Digital.
All right.
Sorry.
That's good. Yeah. No, you are psychologically fit to continue. Thanks. Is there anything you wanted to get in, or anything I forgot to ask you?
No, I would just tell everyone to give Sling a try. I think there's a lot of people that don't realize that there's options out there that are different than traditional, which gives you access to the same content, a lot more choice. You can watch it on the device that you want. You can watch it where you want. And it's a great experience. So I'd encourage all your listeners to go out there, sign up for a 7-day free trial, and give it a shot.
Yeah, and I think to your point about pricing earlier, it's just like you're going to be paying for internet. And I mean, I think it's kind of like we've fallen into this thing where there's like some default subscriptions you have. I think most people have a Netflix subscription now. A lot of people have Amazon Prime. You're going to have those anyway. You know what I mean? So if you look at a traditional cable sort of triple play package versus Sling, internet plus Sling plus the stuff you're subscribing to anyway, you chances are you're probably going to come out ahead.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Like I said before, I feel like broadband is a given at this point, even if you didn't have it. And so I almost take that out of the calculation. And then if you look at what people are paying for video, even in those triple play bundles, you're into 30 to 50 up. And then if you include the device fees and start charging for premiums and things of that sort, it gets up there. And at a $25 price point, I mean, it's a huge savings.
Yeah. And you can figure out the phone.
Correct.
You don't need the phone. Well, thanks very much for coming by, Jimshade. This has been great.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool. And thank you for listening to MashTalk. Also, why not follow us on Twitter? It's MashTalk, all one word. And go ahead and use that hashtag MashTalk if you want to shout at us from anywhere. We welcome all the feedback. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.